In today's video, I'm gonna talk about Donda by Kanye West and Certified Lover Boy by Drake, give my thoughts and reviews of both albums, and at the very end of the video, I want to discuss these projects from a more meta perspective. What were these world-renowned musicians trying to accomplish, and what will these records do for their legacies? First up is Donda, and spoiler alert, I have a lot more to say specifically about this one than Certified Lover Boy. As a Kanye superfan, I enjoyed this album more than his previous two solo releases, which I felt indifferent to and disliked respectively, but I still don't think that this comes close to his original run of 7 perfect or near perfect albums. After The Life of Pablo, I've felt a certain disconnect with my favorite artist of all time, but at the end of the day, I don't know exactly why that is. When the dust settles, we're talking about the quality and emotional connections we have to the music that's being produced, so that's what I'll be addressing in this video. Not the gossip, not the memes, not the delays. What I'm interested in writing about right now are the 27 tracks that got delivered, and that massive number is a great place to start. 27 tracks totaling almost 2 hours in length is something that was always going to be hard to justify. This thing is obviously very bloated, and I think that it'd be hard to argue otherwise. Between the 30 plus guest features, the several part 2s at the end of the album, certain verses feeling unfinished and some songs feeling like incomplete ideas, the quality and ambition within the record does not earn this runtime. But with that being said, I do think there's a great album somewhere hidden amongst the filler. Jesus is King felt impersonal to me. Corny Christian rap did not automatically become interesting because Kanye was the one doing it. But on Donda, I do believe where he's coming from at a much more real, personal level. The Kanye that we all know and either love or hate, depending on who you ask, is a complicated, misunderstood individual. I think that on his previous record, he was using his faith to try and disguise some of that darkness, whereas on Donda, we get a more accurate depiction of his struggles. So I think that distinction is what divides the album between believable tracks that I'm emotionally invested in and generic filler that only distracts us from the story at hand. While in my personal life, organized religion isn't exactly something I'm fond of, its ideals and themes can still very much translate for me within music, film, or whatever else. A song like 24, one of my favorites on the album, is a perfect example of this. Acknowledging the harsh realities of life but persevering anyway is a staple of religious allegory and Kanye's own discography. The problems he faced in his early life were present in The College Dropout and Late Registration, then extreme grief in 808s, and then the existential power struggle that comes with your own celebrity on Twisted Fantasy, Yeezus, and Pablo. Coming face to face with your demons and powering on is an incredibly relatable, influential concept. It's what makes Runaway my favorite song of all time. So on 24, we get this gorgeous intro from the Sunday Service Choir with some effects on the vocals that take my breath away. It brings this element of nostalgia that feels like a warm hug. And with lyrics like, "Dear God, make it all right, nothing else ever feels right," that's absolutely beautiful. Then Kanye's flawed vocals are so raw and moving, you can't help but feel like they're coming right from his heart. As the track continues and the choir harmonizes with Ye, we're presented with a couple more lines that genuinely bring tears to my eyes. The simple repetition of "we gonna be okay, we gonna be okay," and then "God's not finished, God's not finished," this is enough to bring me, someone who is not religious whatsoever, to an extremely spiritual state of mind, and within the context of the song, I'm 100% on board. And then Heaven and Hell has a completely different sound and mood, but it's another example of Christian Ye that feels inspiring and motivating to me. This is the aggressive, ferocious, unstoppable force within Kanye that we've seen on tracks like Power or New Slaves, but in this holy setting, you're replacing characteristics like braggadocious and unstable with things like focused and committed. It's fascinating. Within these few years of religious Kanye, I've never felt like he's made better music because of his faith, but with songs like these, I think it can make a truly positive difference. There's something about his approach here that makes you root for him so hard. The sample on this song is cool, and it sounds like some kind of higher power. I'm obsessed with how the instrumental builds and builds as Kanye's delivery gets more intense, and by the time he goes a cappella for a second, I'm rocking back and forth to the music, arguably harder than I ever have with a Kanye song before. It's like I'm right there with him as he's preaching with every fiber of his being. And when I first heard the CD quality version of this and that beat drop came, I was cheering at the top of my lungs. It's my favorite Kanye musical moment in a long time. Other tracks that I think heavily feature Kanye's faith lyrically and musically that I really enjoy are Jonah, Moon, the title track Donda, Keep My Spirit Alive, Jesus Lord, Come to Life, and No Child Left Behind. These songs, plus the two that I talked about in depth, are the examples of Kanye's religion combining with his music in a thought-provoking, emotional, believable way. The stuff that I cannot stand that I think is super cringeworthy and takes so much away from the album are all the lyrics that Ye raps about God or the devil or whatever that feel like an afterthought. Again, this is just my own opinion, and I think because religion can be such a taboo subject with people, everybody's perspective on this idea is going to be different, but I think these lyrics should be powerful in one way or another. Remember, we're talking about the ultimate good or the ultimate evil here. It's crazy to me that I don't hear more people talking about this, but Kanye completely loses me when he talks about God or Satan like they're trivial things. Take, for example, the line in No More Parties in LA about Kanye's cousin that stole the laptop. His vocal inflections will lead you to believe that this event was really stressful for him, and it hurt him deeply that someone in his family would do something like that to him and his privacy. But it happened all the time on Jesus is King and more than a few times on Donda. When I hear a line like, "Tell the devil good night, go to sleep," said in this casual manner, it feels like a joke. Luckily, these less meaningful, laid-back mentions of religion don't invalidate the songs that do hit hard for me, but when I'm thinking about the album as a whole, it's definitely a low point. Another aspect of Donda is that it's less of a Christian rap album and more of a rap album that happens to feature Kanye sometimes, and of the more standard hip-hop songs on the record, things are heavily dependent on how good or bad the features are, because plain and simple, they take up a good chunk of those songs. Jail is a good track, and I think it's one of the few times where Kanye pretty clearly out-raps a guest feature on this album. The recurring line of "We all liars" is more of that self-deprecating realism that I love, and his second verse seems like he's warming up for what's ahead. It's kind of playful, kind of annoyed, but more than anything, there's energy here. The Jay-Z verse feels like a perfect fit for the story of everything, but the actual technical stuff is kind of embarrassing. The beginning and end could be memes, but at least he heats up in the middle for a second. It's not terrible, but I don't know. I think the chorus in Off the Grid is annoying, but all the verses are top-notch. Cardi does exactly what you want him to, 5EO has the best rapping verse on the album, and then Kanye does a decent job following him up, too. Hurricane is worth listening to for the heavenly vocals from The Weeknd, and that touching, painful verse from Lil Baby. I like Travis and Baby Keem on Praise God, but this is where you start wondering whether certain songs would be better if Kanye wasn't on them at all, and then at that point you question why they would even be on the album then, and it gets a bit confusing. Remote Control is another example of this. I think Kanye's contribution is solid and I like the song, but this kind of track, where I'm really just waiting for the Young Thug verse, feels different than past examples of Kanye's collaborations. On a song like Gorgeous, for example, there's prominent features from Kid Cudi and Raekwon that I love, but Kanye is still clearly running the show. It's his album. But on Donda, I find myself questioning the vision from time to time. Other positive features are Roddy Ricch on Pure Souls and Jay Electronica on Jesus Lord, but there's also a trio of names that I don't even feel like mentioning because I fear that their inclusions on the album are simply publicity stunts. In my perfect world, we would have gotten a much more efficient 17-track album totaling around 60 minutes that has a good mix of authentic, faith-based hip-hop and ambient, some songs that are more rap-focused but still stay true to the themes of the record, plenty of elite guest verses and choruses, and we'd even be able to keep interludes stuff like Donda Chant and the phone call outro of Jesus Lord. With the album that we got, I think it was ambitious and it gave me a much better understanding of Kanye's religious perspective within music, but it was far too much material and there's still certain aspects that don't resonate with me at all. Obviously, I like all the songs that I put on my dream track list, but my absolute favorites are 24 and Heaven and Hell primarily, then Jesus Lord and Come to Life, and I like Praise God and Moon a lot too. For least favorite songs, I think God Breathed was a complete waste of a track, and then the in Junya is grating. And now a much more general review of Drake's new album, Certified Lover Boy. From a positive perspective, I'm not sure there's anybody in music history that is so good at replicating one sound over and over again without his fans getting sick of it. It's genuinely captivating to watch the biggest artist in the world make the same project 4 times in a row and sit there in awe as he breaks his own records again and again. I can't explain it. And from a more cynical, honest perspective, Certified Lover Boy is another bland, boring collection of low-key, chill vibe playlist sing rap that feels like music for people that aren't actually paying attention to the music. At this point, Drake to me feels like the human embodiment of the anime beats to study to live stream. For 5 years straight, he's been dropping the safest possible music that isn't exactly bad when you look at it individually, but when we talk about artistic evolution, there's nothing whatsoever. Immaturity is a complaint that you probably want to throw out the window before you talk about a 34-year-old making an album called Certified Lover Boy, but with songs like Girls Want Girls and F***ing Fans, it's music that you'd expect from Degrassi-era Drake. However, I will say that every recent Drake album has produced at least one so bad it's good, ridiculous amalgamation of music industry tropes and stereotypes, and Way Too Sexy fits that description. It's the one song that made me feel anything, regardless of what that feeling was. So what did these albums accomplish for either musician? When it comes to quality and ambition, I don't think there's any competition. I'd put Donda at a very strong 7 to a light 8, but like I said, I think there's a group of genuinely great tracks in here too. It's hard to speak in hypotheticals, but I think my proposed track list would be a strong 8 to a light 9 for me. I admit that my views on CLB are warped because of my lack in interest in, you know, the everything about it, but I'd probably give it a 3 or a 4, maybe a 5 if I had never heard another Drake album before this one. P.S. This is a little besides the point, but I just want to say that Andre 3000's verse on the leaked Kanye to Drake diss track is better than anything on Certified Lover Boy, and 90% of the verses on Donda. It's a real shame that we couldn't get a fully realized version of that song. To end this video, I want to speak candidly off the top of my head. That drama, the whole rivalry, is funny because ultimately it's apples and oranges. Again, trying to remove my own bias, these are two remarkably talented, intelligent artists that made these albums for completely different reasons. With Kanye posting Drake's address and the group messages and whatnot, he can think that he won the beef because he put out this artistic spectacle for weeks on end. Good reviews are fine, but living in the stadiums, the ambitious nature of the project, the messages to his late mother, recreating his childhood home, and so on, Kanye won. But Drake laughing at Kanye, announcing the release date shortly after Donda dropped, and proving once again that he's the biggest commercial musician on the planet, Drake won too. Both of these fan bases are passionate about their idols, and I understand that. However, I think it's important to take a step back from all the hoopla, really listen to the music, and take everything else with a grain of salt. Thanks for watching. Thank you for watching that video. If you want to support the channel, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. You can follow me on social media at RenshawHS. You can buy my merch, support my Patreon, and thank you again. I'll see you soon.